Hi everyone, welcome to the stream. Hopefully everyone can see and hear correctly. It's kind of a weird day for us um, behind the scenes. So, with the Supreme Court, uh, let's see, we are live, correct? Um, so the Supreme Court today hands down a bunch of decisions. They do this once a year, and it's their final day of the year to do so, right? So every June we have this sort of day. 10 years ago, we had this day. Uh, hello? 10 years ago, we had this sort of day where it was the final day they had to get their decisions in by. And we had the Obergefell v. Hodges case, which allowed everyone in the United States to finally get the right to marriage equality, right? So finally, that decision comes down in, oh God, a long, long time ago, uh, in 2016, I believe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong. For one in the United States, there were some states which had the ability to have marriage equality, and you just couldn't go across state lines, and your marriage wasn't valid across a state line or something like that. Nowadays, ever since that 2016 decision, you can go across state lines as much as you want around the entire United States, and you are fine. Um, so that affected people like my husband and I, where, if we travel to different states like New York or something like that, uh, we were fine. But if we travel to different states, we could be, um, you know, completely ruled out. And it really depended on which state you lived in or which state you were traveling to that the law applied to you. So there's been a lot of decisions today, a lot that certain people in the presidency have been taking credit for, even though they have nothing to do with it. Um, but one case particularly stands out to us, and we're going to talk a lot about today, is the Mahmoud versus Taylor case. If you're not aware, basically what happened was there was this case in Montgomery County Public Schools uh, in, I believe it was, yeah, Washington, D.C. area. So it's a very liberal area of the country. As we pointed out in, actually, it's not a released video yet. It's coming out next week, I believe it is. It's populated territories, but it's only because there's only so many people there. So its population is low in general in Washington, D.C. But basically, what happened was this school district said, look, we're going to initially have some LGBTQ themed books in the library of the school. And that caused chaos. So they have LGBTQ themed books in the library that are available to the students to read if they so choose. They're just sitting on a shelf. No one's reading them. To the kids, no one's forcing them, saying, hey, you have to read this book for a book report. It's just sitting on a library shelf. Parents didn't like this very much, and initially the school allowed parents to opt out of this program of you can take your kids out of class for the library period. As many of us know, there's a certain period of time where, I don't know about other countries, but at least here in the United States, there was a period of time in school where you were required to go to the library and read books or whatever you wanted to do, research whatever project. It's basically like a study hall, for lack of a better term, here in the United States. In other countries, you might have to actually read some books and do some actual work. Here in the United States, it's more like a study hall of it's just free time. There really is a very lack of accountability during this time in the United States. So basically, these kids go to the library, and initially, parents were allowed to opt their kids out of this program. So parents could decide, hey, because there's these, I believe it was five LGBTQ themed books in a library full of books, full of hundreds of books, full of thousands of books. You could opt your child out of this library time. So the school had to take your kids and take them to a different area of the school where they were never allowed in the library, basically, according to the parents' wishes. So your child never got access to any of the books in the library, any of the computers, any of that information, because you opted out of this program. So your kids were taken somewhere else, to a different room, to do different activities, and the kids whose parents allowed them to be around these like handful of books in the library on the shelves went to the library, right? Then suddenly, I believe it was when was it? In 2022. So we're talking about like 3 years ago now. The school said, look, there are too many kids being opted out of this program, where it's no longer sustainable for us. They said, quote, some schools, for example, experienced unsustainably high numbers of absent students. The district told the justices in a brief this month, quote, the need to shuttle students in and out of the classroom would moreover disrupt those classrooms. So basically they're saying, look, there are too many students whose parents do not want them to be around these handful of books in the library that are sitting on a shelf. So we can't really justify having a teacher go do another activity with all of those students whose parents opted their children out of this, and have a librarian who has to teach the other kids. Like, both are not sustainable here. Why are we paying two different teachers to handle students at the same time when the class sizes are not that big to begin with, you know? They just couldn't justify the expense, right? And in a time when the Department of Education is cracking down on budgets and asking schools to do way more with 10 times less money, that's not easy to do, especially in Washington, D.C., where a lot of focus is on budgets, with the federal government being right there in the same city. So for that, the school said, look, there's no more opt-out program. The parents who are afraid of their kids being around these books have unfounded allegations of this being dangerous. You know, they're just books sitting on a shelf in the library. No one's forcing them to read those books. If they pick up those books, they're just reading. Who cares, you know? So every student has to stay in the library during this period of time. So then they got sued pretty quickly. And as you can guess, this is from a very conservative organization that helped with the lawsuit. I believe Moms for Liberty had a lot to do with it, which is a known hate group. But this was, let me see the exact ruling here. Okay. A group was called Kids First, which was organized in opposition to the district's books policy. But it included Let's see, where's it at? Sorry, this literally just got handed down today, like an hour ago. So we're still like sorting through all of the information. It involved two Muslim parents and two Christian parents, I believe. Was there any other parents? Maybe there was a third parent. But basically, these two sets of parents said that you're not allowing us to opt our children out of library time because these 5 books on the shelf are going against our religious beliefs, right? Okay, so they felt their children, I believe 2 children, should be allowed to do this. But a lot of parents were doing this and saying, look, we don't want our kids around those 5 books, so we're opting them out of this entire program where they can enter the library. So they fought in court. Now, they're relying on a 1972 precedent, which was a Supreme Court case which allowed Amish families to remove their children from school after 8th grade, despite a Wisconsin law that required students to remain enrolled until they were 16 years of age. So basically in 1972, if you're not familiar with the Amish lifestyle, Amish live, I live here in Pennsylvania, so we deal with Amish all the time, right down the road. The Amish don't majorly believe in electricity. They believe very heavily in their religious beliefs, where their kids grow up and they work very early in life for a living. And so these Amish families were fighting a Wisconsin law that's basically said that you have to keep your kids in school until 16 years of age. And the Supreme Court eventually said, look, if you want your kids to leave school at the age of in 8th grade instead of staying until 16 years old, then because of your religious beliefs, we have to allow that. Now, in the United States, religious beliefs have been used a lot to get whatever the hell parents want. It's like the free speech argument of, I'm allowed to say whatever I want without consequences because I have free speech. No, there's still consequences, by the way, but the consequence of this is, your kids aren't learning. You're opting your children out of this program, so they're not going to learn. That's a consequence for that action. But the court ruled, look, if you want to do it as parents, you are the parents. So I guess that it's allowed, right? So this case today relied heavily on that defense of, look, we are allowing kids in Wisconsin to leave class in 8th grade because of their religious beliefs being Amish and having Amish parents, but we're allowing our kids to be in a library now with 5 LGBTQ books on the shelves that they are not forced to read, that we do not believe in. So here's what, just so everyone's clear, here are the books that we're talking about specifically. One is called Prince and Knight. It tells the story of a prince who does not want to marry any of the princesses in the realm. After teaming up with a knight to slay a dragon, the two fall in love, filling the king and the queen with joy, according to the school's summary. Another is called Born Ready. It tells the story of Penelope, a character who likes skateboarding and wears baggy jeans. When Penelope tells his mother that he is a boy, he is accepted by his mother. When Penelope's brother questions his gender identity, The mother hugs both children and whispers, "Not everything needs to make sense. This is about love." So they are the two books that are in question. Okay. So one where a prince loves and falls in love with a knight, and another where a character rides a skateboard and wears baggy jeans. Oh no, how terrible of books to have on a shelf. That is what this case is based on. Just everything to come, just keep that in mind. Okay? These are harmless books. Okay? Any kid can read these books and go, okay, whatever, you know. I have LGBTQ books that dive a lot deeper into these kind of emotions and feelings, you know, that I've authored and illustrated myself. These are very tame books in the genre, right? And again, no one is requiring these kids to read them. They're just sitting on the shelf, available to the kids to read during library time. Okay. So they took this case all the way to the United States Supreme Court, these parents. And they said, look, you should not be forcing our kids to be around these books, these two books, in a library of hundreds. You should not be allowing our kids to be around these two books. So these parents have argued they should be allowed to opt their children out of library time so that way they're not around these two books. Okay. Just so we're all clear. So today, Supreme Court in April, they heard the oral arguments on these cases, and it was pretty clear from the questioning that the justices were coming down with and asking the lawyers on both sides about. Because keep in mind, when you get to the Supreme Court level, nothing is cheap. Nothing is the actual plaintiffs or defendants anymore. It is all lawyers. It is all highly experienced lawyers from teams like ACLU, Lambda Legal, like the big law firms. You're not talking about a, you know, cut rate lawyer that the, you know, school board hired for this case anymore. They've long passed in the lower courts, and now it's in the hands of much more experienced lawyers that have handled Supreme Court cases before. There's law firms on the far right that have handled a majority of the Supreme Court cases that you've ever heard of. So in the oral arguments in April of this year, the lawyers were asked a lot of questions on, you know, why do you think this is okay to, you know, allow parents to not opt their children out of something? Parental rights was a major factor in the case in April. But today, a majority decision came down. I believe it was 6-3. I want to be specific on who ruled on it. LGBT books case ruling. All right, here we go. Let's see. It was 6-3 today. Who voted which way? Who voted which way? I'm sorry. All right. Well, we'll find that out in the decision. Who voted which way? Let's see. All right. All right. So the majority was written by Justice Samuel Alito. He wrote the majority opinion, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote the dissent for. I'm sorry, the case is technically in Maryland. Yes, the case is technically in Maryland. I am sorry about that. It's not Washington, D.C. Still a very liberal state, by the way. All right, I'll fix it next time. There we go. So let's see the actual court case filing by the majority. I wish I can share my screen, but there's no way to do that on YouTube specifically. That requires OBS or something. So the majority argued during the 2022 to 2023 school year, the Montgomery County Board of Education introduced a variety of LGBTQ inclusive texts into the public school curriculum. Those texts included 5 LGBTQ inclusive storybooks approved for students in kindergarten through 5th grade. Oh no, a 5th grader might read about a knight and a prince getting together. Oh no. Which have the storylines focused on sexuality and gender. When parents in Montgomery County sought to have their children excused from instruction involving those books, keep in mind that means they wanted them excluded from library time because those 5 books were just on the shelf. God forbid. The board initially compromised with parents by notifying them when the LGBTQ inclusive storybooks would be taught and permitting their children to be excused from the instruction. That compromise was consistent with the board's guidelines for respecting religious diversity, which professed a commitment to making, quote, reasonable accommodations for the religious beliefs and practices of students. Less than a year after the board introduced the books, however, it rescinded the parental opt-out policy. Among other things, the board said that it, quote, could not accommodate the growing number of opt-out requests without causing significant disruptions to the classroom environment. So the school board argued, look, too many students are opting out of this program, and now we need 2 different entire teachers to teach certain class periods because so many students are opting out of this. So many parents are opting out of having these books on the shelf. This is the majority argument, by the way, written by the majority 6-3 in the decision, in the dissent of the case, or in what? Sorry. Yeah. The petitioners here are a group of individuals and parents and an unincorporated association of other interested parties. In other words, far-right organizations. The individual parents come from diverse religious backgrounds and hold sincere views on sexuality and gender, which they wish to pass on to their children. It's called grooming, by the way. Okay. Faced with the board's decision to rescind opt-outs, petitioners filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court for the District of Maryland. Among other things, they asserted that the board's no opt-out policy infringed on parental rights and the free exercise of their religion. They relied heavily on the Wisconsin v. Yoder case, in which court recognized that the parents have the right to, quote, direct the religious upbringing of their children, and that this right can be infringed by laws that pose a, quote, very real threat of undermining the religious beliefs and practices that parents wish to install in their children. Petitioners sought a preliminary and permanent injunction prohibiting the school board from forcing their children and other students over the objection of the parents to read, listen to, or discuss the storybooks. The district court denied relief and a divided panel of the Fourth Circuit affirmed. Parents challenging the board's introduction of LGBTQ inclusive storybooks, along with its decision to withhold opt-outs, are entitled to a preliminary injunction. The parents assert that the board's instruction of LGBTQ inclusive storybooks, combined with its decision with hold notices and opt-outs, unconstitutionally burdens their religious exercise. Let's see, where does it go? So basically, 6 people of the 9 Supreme Court justices held that parents should be allowed to opt out their children of anything to do with LGBTQ books in the library. So, you know, that means schools across the country now have to, and by the way, this is something we have to talk about because this is not just about one school. I wish it was. I wish it was about like, oh, hey, that's just one case, right? And this one school has to do something different. No, like this is across the country. It's just like Obergefell v. Hodges, where one case of Obergefell rules on the entire country, you know? And that's the way this goes. Where Supreme Court is now ruling on things that set the law. Just so everyone's clear on this, okay? The legislator, meaning Congress, meaning the House of Representatives and Senators, are supposed to write the laws. The executive branch, meaning the president, is supposed to sign or veto that law going into place, right? And so all of the debate of how a law is written is supposed to happen in the legislature, the Congress, House of Representatives and Senators. When they finally pass a bill, it goes to the president. And the president says, hey, I support this, so I'm going to sign it into law, or I don't support this, and I'm going to veto it, which means it goes back to the Congress, and Congress needs to pass that with a supermajority now to say, look, we want this anyway, even though the president doesn't, right? Then finally, it goes to SCOTUS, which is the Supreme Court of the United States, the justice or judicial side of the government, where they rule, look, whatever you wrote in this bill and whatever the president signed or vetoed, is it constitutional? And that's the final question on whether a law actually makes it to being a law. A bill makes it to law, right? So basically, the SCOTUS is only meant to define what the law is in comparison to new laws and rule on some small cases. They are never meant to write law. The president is never meant to write law. The only one that's allowed to write the law is the legislator, the Congress, the House of Representatives and Senators, right? They're the only ones allowed to write the law. Lately, we've had a lot of executive orders from the executive branch, meaning the president, which basically overruled everything. And that's why you see President Obama and Biden and convicted felon Donald Trump coming out and saying, I'm going to sign an executive order and do something no matter what anyone else says. And it's more like a dictatorship move or a fascist move than anything else. But also, Congress doesn't like to act on a whole lot of things. Congress likes to say, look, we have to get voted in again in 4 or 6 years, so we don't want to write anything in a bill. Democrats and Republicans alike both say, look, if we write this bill, well, we're going to have to stand up to our voters in 4 to 6 years and say, that's what I did, right? And they don't want to do that because there might be people that don't agree with that bill being written, right? So they say, look, we're not going to write any laws anymore. We're not going to write any bills at all. And that's why you see a very unproductive Congress happening the least productive Congress we've had in 200 years, right? They don't want to go back to their voters and say that they wrote anything, because it's better to go back to your voters and say, vote for me again and re-elect me so that way I can get what you want done. Well, you didn't get what I wanted done the first time, or the second time, or the third time, or in, Schumer or, a lot of other cases, you didn't do what I wanted you to do for the first 30 times. What makes the 31st time any different, right? So, okay. Anyway, so recently the Supreme Court of the United States has been ruling on cases for the past 10 or so years that have basically been laws. They'll rule on something, and because no lower court wants to challenge the Supreme Court of the United States, it becomes an unwritten law. Where, look at Obergefell v. Hodges, right? The Supreme Court ruled that marriage equality is now a federal ruling. So the district courts, the lower courts of the United States, your county local office didn't want to rule against marriage equality. So now it's well, we don't want to rule against it, so it becomes just the norm of how things are done, right? With this case in Mahmoud versus Taylor today, it basically says, look, every school in the United States that has a law or an ordinance or a rule that does not allow parents to opt out of their children being in a library with an LGBTQ book in it, that's not allowed anymore. So basically, it forces every single school district in the United States to allow opt-out programs. Any parent in the United States now, after today's decision, can opt their children out of being in a classroom or a library or an area of a school with an LGBTQ book at all. So that's not only, very a big decision, of huge setback for our community, but it's also just a major expense that's about to come down on every school district in a time when funding for education is already at an all-time low in the United States, and more funding is being pulled every day from the United States education system by convicted felon Donald Trump, by the way. So this is a major win for Donald Trump. This is a major loss for our community. Let's see if we can get to the Justice Alito did the opinion of the court, and Sotomayor did the opinion of the dissent. Let's see if we can see this. By the way, this is a 135-page decision, and it literally came out at 11:30 today. It's now 12:45, and we've been streaming for half an hour. Yeah, specifically, the pages in question, oh my God, they actually put the evidence in here. Welcome to a effed up world. Okay, the pages in question, specifically that the parents argued are against their religious freedom, are, quote, after Pie, Uncle Bobby and Jamie made an announcement. We're getting married, said Uncle Bobby. Mummy whooped and hugged him. Daddy shook hands with Jamie. Everyone was smiling and talking and crying and laughing. Oh no. Oh my God, that's the page that they're like, oh my God, I don't want my kids to read that. Oh no. Oh, oh man, we are fucked. Let's see if we can do dissent. Yeah, so the ruling is crazy. Sotomayor, in along with two other justices, ruled against this and said, no, schools have every right to uh, force kids to learn instead of their parents opting them out of education, or the access to information. Um, Said public schools, this case has said, are, quote, at once the symbol of our democracy and the most pervasive means of promoting our common destiny. They offer to children of all faiths and backgrounds an education and an opportunity to practice living in our multicultural society. That experience is critical to our nation's civic vitality. Yet it will become a mere memory if children must be insulated from exposure to ideas and concepts that may conflict with their parents' religious beliefs. So basically, Sotomayor is saying, look, if you opt kids out of even having access to books like this, then you are saying that your religious freedom as a parent means more than the religious freedom of your child to choose on their own. And remember, that is the basics of our US Constitution. Every single citizen has the right to freedom of expression and religious beliefs, including the child, even if that does not agree with the religious freedom of their parent or guardian. She continues, today's ruling ushers in a new reality. Casting aside long-standing precedent, the court invents a constitutional right to avoid exposure to subtle themes contrary to the religious principles that parents wish to install in their children. Exposing students to the message that LGBTQ people exist and that their loved ones may celebrate their marriages and life events, the majority says is enough to trigger the most demanding form of judicial scrutiny. That novel rule is squarely foreclosed by our precedent and offers no limiting principle. Given the great diversity of religious beliefs in this country, countless interactions that occur every day in public schools might expose children to messages that conflict with that parent's religious beliefs. If that is sufficient to trigger strict scrutiny, then little is not. That is a very well-worded dissent to this decision. Unfortunately, it is 6-3, meaning schools now have to allow every parent the option to opt out of education to their students. So basically, it means you are allowed to, this is not a homeschooling rule. I hear that in the comments a little bit. There is some confusion on that. So let me clear that up. So basically, homeschooling would be one option, but that's not what this court is saying. The court is saying that you as a parent would have the right from now on to tell a school, look, I do not want my kid to be around any education that goes against my religious beliefs. It's way more than LGBTQ. It goes into every facet of education. So basically, you can now say, oh, look, my religious belief is that slave ownership never happened in the United States. Well, it's a fact that it happened, but you as a person now have the right as a parent to say, my religious beliefs do not agree with that fact. And so I'm going to opt my child out of any education that involves that fact in their life. So I don't want them around any book that includes people of color, any story of people of color. I don't agree. You can say I don't agree with them learning about the Holocaust, which very much was a real thing. But now you can say I don't agree with that. So as a parent, you could opt out your children from learning anything about World War II. It's as if the World War II never happened. You can opt them out of, learning. For instance, I had to read a lot of books as a kid about like Diary of Anne Frank and that kind of thing. Now it's not necessarily going to be taught to your kids. Anything that goes against your religious beliefs as a parent is now something you can opt your children out of in class. Not only forcibly, but availability too. What I mean by that is, not only is it, let's say a teacher in history class talks about World War II. Okay, just for an example here. You can say, look, I don't want that teacher to tell my children about World War II, the Holocaust, anything like that. Okay, so that teacher now has to make sure that the parents agree to every single word that they say as a teacher. Otherwise, the school can get sued and has to pay out a massive settlement to the family. But also availability. So there might be a book in the library about, actually it goes further than that. There might be a globe in your school classroom. And you as a parent would have the right now, after this case, to say, my religious belief believes that the earth is flat. So I don't want my child exposed to seeing a globe of the earth on the desk of the teacher. I don't want them to do a class assignment of the solar system because I don't believe other planets exist. It literally, this one case has ramifications to so many other things. It's not just about one or two books. It's not just about one page in a book that's available in a library. This is about so much more. And it's basically saying, look, I have the right as a parent to not allow you to teach my child anything without my permission of you teaching that specific thing. It is incredible. I don't know why any judge would allow such a thing. In the United States, we have laws for a reason. Because many times, not every time, but many times, parents are stupid. And they don't know what is best for their own kids. There is a reason why the Department of Education has educators as their leaders. Look, let me put it this way. If we had a country where all you taught kids was what their parents currently know, then there would never be advancement, right? You would have a lot of MAGA Republicans saying, look, I want my kid to learn how Trump is Jesus. He's the second coming. Well, technically now, because of this Taylor decision, parents have the right to say that, which is crazy. Just so everyone is aware, in Oklahoma, they have a book that is required to be in every classroom now. The Trump Bible is required to be in every school classroom in Oklahoma. we live in a country of freedom of religion, which also by definition means freedom from religion if you so choose, and yet Trump Bibles are being required to be in every classroom in Oklahoma. Meanwhile, in Maryland, a case was just decided that, we're not going to have any education in any classroom. Like, what is this going to be next year? Does a school now have to send a syllabus home to every parent and have them check mark off all the things they're okay with their child learning? And would that then mean that, hey, before today's lesson, I have to check if everyone in my class, as a teacher, do I have to check if everyone in my classroom has parents that agreed to today's lesson? And if not, that child has to be sent out to a study hall or a library. Actually, no, it's just an empty fucking room, because they're not allowed in the library because it has 2 LGBT books on the shelf. So what is the end goal of this case? And that's what Sotomayor was writing in her opinion, is just there is no end to this case now that we've allowed it. Whereas the majority ruled, look, you have to send everything home to a parent, and they have to agree to every single thing as a bullet point that you're going to talk about as a teacher. And I don't understand that. Like, what is the end for this case? So let's go to some comments. Aren't most libraries public? Yes, but school libraries are not. In the United States, at least, it might be different in other countries. Again, other countries are so much better on education than we are. I seriously don't understand how the greatest country on earth is so far behind on this. It might be because we fund the military so much, and our military is the police of the world. And that's why other countries can afford healthcare and education, because they're not spending it on defense. But I don't understand how we're so far behind on this. So libraries are public in your town, but the school library would be only available to students in that school, whereas the books are technically available to anyone. For instance, where I went to high school, my school library had 1,000 books, let's say, right? It was a fairly sizable library, right? Then the town that we were in had a public library as well that had, maybe, let's say, 1 million books, because it was a massive library. So the public library was available to all of us to just walk in any day we wanted. The school library, only us as students could go to, or teachers could go to, because it was literally inside the high school. You needed to be a student there to access them. But let's say, there was a person in the public library that wanted to access a book that was just being held in the school library. Okay, well, then once a day there was shipments back and forth because they were 2 blocks away from each other, and you can get access to any book that's over here as long as you ask for it in the public library. So they'll be like, hey, we're just storing that book over the high school right now, let me bring it over later this afternoon. No problem. Vice versa. So if you wanted to read a book in the high school and it was being stored in the public library, again, they brought books back and forth every day around 1 p.m. or something like that, So it's very much a shared program. Constitutionally, they're not allowed to ban a library from having a book available in the public library. Now in Florida, there was just an interesting case a couple years ago about banning anything that had sexual orientation or gender identity. So anything that involved straight couples or gay couples or trans people or non-binary people or cisgender people had to be removed from every public or private library, every public library and school library in the state of Florida because of the Don't Say Gay law. So a lot of libraries in Florida are still to this day nearly empty because they had to remove almost every single book from their shelf. They wanted to ban only books that involved gay couples, but in their writing for doing so in the actual law, they wrote sexual orientation, which meant any book that involved a straight couple, they also had to remove. So libraries in Florida are currently just almost empty, which is a big deal. But basically, those public libraries outside of Florida allow books in them. It's just now you as a parent could opt your child out of being in the library at all if the library has any of those books that you don't agree with on the shelf. So let's say the library has a globe inside of it or a book on geography. Well, you as a parent could decide, look, I'm a flat earther and I don't believe the earth is round. So I'm not going to allow my child in the library that has a book available about the earth being round. You could say, I don't believe in the Holocaust as a parent. So I'm not going to allow my child in the library if it has a book that talks about the Holocaust. You could say, I don't want my child around a book that involves sexual orientation, so that they don't think, oh, there's something else other than straight available to people. And so you could say, look, the library technically has a book about a straight couple in the Bible, and I don't want them around that. So I'm going to opt them out of being available to go into the library. So the question is, are we going to need bodyguards at libraries to make sure the opt-out students don't go near? It's more about the librarian, and the librarian is going to have to now have a list of every parent or every child whose parents or guardians opted them out of any book in the library. So I would say, as an educator myself, and having worked with schools across the country for many, many years now, our education here at Powered by Rainbows is in about 20,000 school districts worldwide. I have many, many friends that are teachers who are very upset about this decision. But yeah, I would say the easiest way to now deal with this decision would be having a list of every book that's available in their school library. A school is now going to probably opt out of shared programs with public libraries in the town because there's no way to control what books go back and forth every day. So the easiest way to do this from now on is going to probably be the school saying, look, here's every book that we have in our school library. We're not going to get any new books every year. Probably once a year before the school year starts in August, you're going to have the school say, look, here's a list of every book in the library. If you disagree with any of these books, then your student, your child will not be allowed into the library at all. You're going to also have teachers giving out syllabuses to parents and guardians and saying, look, if you disagree with any of the bullet points we're going to cover in this year's lesson, then we're not going to have your student, your child involved in that lesson. So there was a famous case of a book, an algebra book in Florida that was making a lot of waves involved in this. It was just a math book, but on the side of the one page, it had a picture of the first person of color in the United States who graduated college for mathematics, right? And because it included a picture of this person of color who's very well respected in the industry, because it included his picture, parents were allowed to opt out of their children having that book in their hand at all. And so now students in Florida, the parents were allowed to say, look, they're not going to learn any algebra this year because it has this one page that includes a picture of a person of color. And it went against their, quote, religious beliefs to learn about people of color existing. That was argued and that was upheld by the Supreme Court of Florida. It never went to the federal level, but the state level ruled in favor of the parents. So it is mind-baffling the amount that you can say is your religious belief. And it's a reason why we want, parents to not have these decisions and educators to have these decisions instead, because you can just say, I don't want my kids to learn anything, right? And now they're going to school for 8 hours a day, and it's like, what am I learning? Nothing. Oh, great, like now they're coming home dumber than they went, So yeah, it's going to be mostly the teachers. There's no real bodyguards. It's going to be the teachers and the librarians and the school staff that are just like, oh, sorry, Charlie, you're not allowed in the library ever because your mom and dad didn't want you to learn about that one book. I mean, if it gets to a point where a majority of parents don't like one book in particular, the school might just say, look, we'll take that book off the shelf. That way kids can be allowed in the library again. But for the most part, this is going to be a line by line item decision that's going to affect a lot of kids. We are making our kids dumber with this decision. So bad. Would these people consider an LGBT person or teacher as one of these things, or just content of the teaching? Yes. That is something else that is in this decision. If your teacher happens to be gay, happens to be married, like one of my good friends is a teacher that's married and also teaches actually math in school. So you could say as a parent, I don't want my kid around someone who may mention something. That teacher might say in passing conversation with another teacher in the hallway, and my child might overhear it. I don't want them around that conversation where that teacher might say, oh yeah, my husband and I are going out this weekend to wherever, right? Or, talking about, oh, my husband went to the grocery store last night, like even that kind of thing, you can now opt out of. So it's very much, this ruling is damning on so many levels of you as a parent get to decide everything your child sees and hears when they're not around you in school. So it's pretty damning. I grew up going to a Christian school without these books, and I still came out gay as hell. These people are the least intelligent humans on the planet if they think it will stop kids from being gay. You're completely right. I went to a Catholic school. I I won't mention any names here just because we can't mention that kind of thing on a stream. But I will say I went to a Catholic grade school. I read a lot of straight books as a kid. I was forced to read the Bible, and I was forced to study it. I had undergone, I would consider it very light conversion therapy. Of my pastor in my church came in, and a Roman Catholic priest came in and said, look, homosexuality is wrong. And later on, that same priest was convicted of doing things to children. But which is baffling to me, of like, oh, you're not allowing me to love my husband who's older than me, but for some reason in your mind as a priest you're allowed to do that with. Anyway, it's crazy. So yeah, I grew up a very straight lifestyle, and yet at 11 years old I was like, I want to kiss my best friend Alex. Why? So yeah, I turned out very, very gay, and yet you're right. It's completely ridiculous to think that not exposing them to these sorts of things will make them less than the rainbow gay person they're always going to be. It's in their DNA. It's not going to change. So not exposing them to learn about gay couples is not going to stop them. The moment that kid gets a cell phone, they can look it up on Google. Or, even in the case of an Amish person, it's like you're still exposed to gay couples all the time. My husband and I go into Amish country, and we shop at farmers markets, and gay couples love farmers markets, where you see a lot of Amish kids, and you're like, just selling produce or something like that, and you're like, it's very obvious we're together. It doesn't stop them from being exposed to gay culture, or and doesn't stop them from being gay themselves. I know from hosting this show in the very early stages, a lot of our audience initially was, believe it or not, Amish. So when we first started, we had a very local audience to where I lived at the time, and it was in Amish country. So that's interesting. Raven McQueen says, hang in there, darlings. We're going to make it. Thank you for your super chat, by the way. We really do appreciate that. I know it's been a couple minutes since you left it. I'm just saying it now. That feels like willful ignorance. Yes. Oh, this whole case is willful ignorance. Like, I don't understand. If a student is halfway through the year and then a lesson they don't like comes up, or do they just leave the entire course, or do they just know beforehand and just not take the course? That is an interesting question. So I don't know why my camera's being weird right now. Basically, because this decision is coming in June, not a whole lot of classes are going on right now besides summer school in the United States. So probably most schools across the country are going to have a month or two right now to react to this decision and make changes in effect for the 2025-2026 school year. So in August, you're going to see a lot of schools across the country come out with a list of, every teacher now has to publish a syllabus of, here are the things I'm going to cover in my class. If you don't want your child exposed to this education, then you can opt out of X, Y, Z, whatever you want, right? And the teacher will have to sit there and go, well, today I'm teaching about whatever, and this parent opted out of this education. So now, hey, Billy, you're not allowed in class today. You have to go somewhere else. And the school would have to figure out where that would be. They can't send them to the library because the library has 2 books on the shelf that are LGBT. So where do you send them? Where do you send the kids? Do you send them to a study hall that's just an empty room with a couple chairs in it? Do you send them to the principal's office? And then the parents are going to argue that, their child is being punished for being Christian. Where do you send the kid? Like, it's an actual problem now for every school in America. Where do you send the kids that have parents who are bigots? And so it's literally going to be, hey, Billy, you're not allowed in class today. Sorry. We're teaching about something that your parents don't want you to learn about. So bye. Enjoy your day, and by the way, don't read the section of the book that we're going to talk about, because I'm going to keep the book. Now, there are so many implications of this that I think it's going to be, hey, you're not allowed to give the kids a science book, a literature book, writing book, any book. Like, how do you give the kids a textbook if their parents haven't agreed to every word in that textbook? It would be one thing if parents actually had to read the books before they barred them, right? There was one school, and I found it very interesting, of a case last year, that one school was having a team of parents read through all of the books in their library, slowly but surely. Like, once a week, they would get together and they would discuss. They were a group of, I believe, like 25, 30 parents, I want to say. And groups of 5 of them would read one book at a time every week. And so 5 of them would read one book, and they would come together the next Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever it was, and they would say, hey, what do y'all think about this book? Should it be allowed on our library school shelf? And if those 5 parents agreed unanimously that it should not be allowed on the shelf, then fine. We'll bar that book. But if those 5 parents cannot decide unanimously, then the book is still going to be available on the shelf. It basically gave parents the responsibility of reading the damn books that they're banning. Because a lot of times what happens is the Moms for Liberty, which is a religious hate group in America, they have this website. I forget the actual title, and I wouldn't want to mention it anyway, just because I don't want to give them extra publicity. There's a website where you can report any book. You can find any quote. Let's say you're reading, my longest book is about 500 pages that I personally wrote. You can quote anything from that 500 pages and report it to this website, right? Now, the quote that you're reporting could be a paragraph. It could be a sentence. It could be 2 words. The minimum requirement was 2 words on this website. And you can say, look, out of this 500 pages, there are 2 words that make it sexually explicit. And suddenly it was on this website forever as sexually explicit material, and the Moms for Liberty group took this list and reported it to the ACA, which is the American ALA, which is the American Library Association. And they reported a baffling number here, 1,600 requests for banning the book entirely from the country of the United States, from public libraries. 1,600 requests went in. 90% of those requests were made by 11 people. 11 people out of 365 million people that live in America. Actually, let's see that. I want to get the actual numbers so you're not all yelling at me. All right. United States population, 340 million people, right? 340 million people, and 11 people were saying that they had more rights than anyone else, and they sent in a majority of the requests to ban 1,600 books. All 11 of those people were members of, I believe, Moms for Liberty or very adjacent to them. And they got their information from this website that Moms for Liberty created. So basically, you can report any book you want for anything you want. There was no context at all. So there were books about, very, very stupid things. I remember Tom Sawyer was in it. It's like, oh, two men might said hi to each other, and it was on this list. It was egregious, the things that this list included, and the group of 11 people reported that book and said, hey, I want this banned from every library, every public library in the United States because it has these two words in it that I don't agree with. Okay, then don't read the damn book. If you don't agree with these two words, then don't do it. Like, and you would ask these people, because 60 Minutes went after and asked these parents, okay, why don't you agree with these two words? Did you what was the book about, right? And they would consistently come back with an answer of, I don't know what the book was about. All I know is these two words. How do you know those two words? Oh, because someone shared a picture on Facebook. What? Like someone shared a picture of the two words? It was very upsetting how many times a book was on this list and the two words were not even in the book in the first place. It was literally just someone making it up and saying, I don't want this book on the shelves, so these two words that I came up with, I don't agree with. Like, and because it was on Facebook, everyone believed it. And it made it to the level of reporting it to the ALA. Like, I don't understand how you can report a book for words that genuinely never appeared in the freaking book. But that happened all the time last year, and it still happens today. There is so much power in the hands of parents nowadays that I don't know how kids are going to learn. Like back in the day, it used to be like, I complain about the standardized testing system in America, where all we're learning is things for a test so that the school can get a good score, so that the school can get more funding, and so the teachers are paid higher. Everything relates to one test. But really, this dumbing down of America is like so far gone from free speech and freedom of religion anymore that it's just, how did we get here? It's very worrying. Very worrying question. Does the decision around LGBT teachers extend to people of color? Yeah. The decision is not specifically about LGBTQ. The decision is stating that you, as a parent, get to decide to opt your child out of any education that disagrees with your religious beliefs. Specifically, this case was about your child being around a book that was on a shelf that they were never forced to read. It was just available in their school library about a gay couple and about a girl named, and about a boy named Penelope who decided to ride a skateboard. But that has implications everywhere else. So while these parents specifically said, we don't want our children around a book about a gay couple announcing their marriage, or a boy named Penelope coming home riding a skateboard, because we don't want our kid around that, this court case went so far now as in their decision, in Justice Alito's decision, it states that, look, you can opt your child out of any education you do not agree with as a parent if it goes against your religious freedom, which is self-defined. Okay, that's a very important part. So it goes into every aspect of life. If you don't believe, let's say a neo-Nazi parent was out there, and they don't want their child exposed to the idea that people of color exist. This court case just gave those parents complete legal ability to go to the school and say, I don't want my child exposed to the idea that people of color exist. If you were a flat earther and you didn't want your child exposed to it, you can say to a school, hey, my religious belief is that the earth is flat, so I don't want my child around a globe or any book that mentions that the earth is round. You can define your religious belief as literally anything in the United States, and now a school has to follow that literally anything self-defined religious freedom. So I think in many ways this is going to get to a point where some students, Democrat students, of progressive families, are going to be allowed to research and learn about anything, and now far-right conservative children, or I should say far-right conservative parents, will opt their child out of so much that there is now no education they're allowed in. Currently, if you don't allow your child, remember, this is not about reading the book itself. No one forced these children to read these two books. No teacher, no guardian, no administrator at the school said, you have to read, what is the actual book called? The Prince and Knight and Born Ready, the two books, right? So no teacher out there said, you as a child have to read Prince and Knight, which tells the story of a prince who does not want to marry any of the princesses in his realm. After teaming up with a knight to slay a dragon, the two fall in love, filling the king and queen with joy, according to the school summary. No teacher out there went and said you have to read as a child Born Ready, which tells the story of Penelope, a character who likes skateboarding and wearing baggy jeans. No one in a school forced the kids to read Prince and Knight or Born Ready. No one. They were just available on the school shelf in the library. So this decision means if you opt your child out of any book in the library, your child is now not allowed in the library at all, because you as a parent don't want them exposed to even the cover of the book, because the cover of the book might be offensive to your religious beliefs. And so now your child is not allowed in the library because you opted out of one book in it. It means if you don't agree with one page in your scientific, in your science textbook, well, now your student is not allowed to have a copy of that science book, because then they're exposed to that science textbook, right? There is no limit to this. And so there are going to be students, and I don't understand this narrative where parents have this level of control over schools, because it begs the question, is your kid going to be allowed around a computer because it accesses the World Wide Web, and there is a possibility they might search Google for a gay couple? Is your school allowed to give access to a student a computer because computers were invented by Alan Turing, a gay man? Like, these are very real questions that now have to be asked in every single school district across America. So, yeah, public schools and private schools have a huge mountain of bullshit in front of them over the next 2 months trying to figure this out. And we just basically ruined our education system. So if parents are living in the mindset, let them homeschool their kids instead of taking us back to the dark ages. Some schools may opt for that and say, look, you opted out of so much education that we provide. It's just better for us to teach what we teach, and your student is homeschooled. But then that begs the question, does that not cause a burden on those parents, right? Because now they have to have at least one parent or guardian home full-time to teach their child instead of having a job. So I can very easily see the court case coming where if a school said, you've opted out of everything, you've opted out of so much of our education that it's just better for you to homeschool your child, the parent still has the right to say, I cannot dedicate the amount of time necessary to homeschool my child, and so I want them to come to school anyway, and you as a school have to find a curriculum that I agree with as a parent, because it's a public education system. It also begs the question of how well is that student going to do on standardized testing if you've opted them out of so much of the education necessary to learn for that test, right? If your student isn't allowed around religious liberty to be exposed to the idea, can you pick and choose which questions are on the test of the standardized testing system that we're in? Or is it going to be a situation where your child is given the test, but they don't know half the answers because they weren't exposed to that education? It's a very real question. And are those students going to be graded on a curve because they were never exposed to half the education required to learn it and required to pass it? And then Billy will go into his pocket, pull out his phone, and Google the subject. Yeah, it's so ridiculous to me to say that, oh, your kid isn't allowed to be around this education in school, be around the book that's available on the school shelf website or on the school library shelf. But here's a phone, Billy. Don't look up Powered by Rainbows. I mean, just so you all know, we are going to lose money off of this. Just so everyone's clear, like, I'm not happy about this for many reasons, but I'm a little more connected to it than most people because we are in 20,000 school districts across the globe. And it's a globe. It's not a flat Earth, but some parents might think the religious freedom says that. But yeah, so we are going to lose money from those schools not being allowed to teach it in every classroom anymore. So yeah, it's a loss for us, but scary. But yeah. But it's not like I'm like, oh, well, we do have a course on gay sexual education and stuff like that. That is in some schools. I'm very, very happy about that because I do believe that students and every person out there should be taught this is what straight relationships do, this is what gay relationships do, this is what trans relationships do. I believe all of that should be true. That way, you know, you're not. A lot of the fear and anxiety towards gay people comes from a lack of understanding of, hey, I'm a gay guy. I like my husband. That's it. That's the only difference. You know, I have a husband instead of a wife. You know, so I believe it's all about the education. And you know, I as a student wanted to learn. You know, how is my relationship going to work? I was in, you know, sex ed class, and I was like, hey, how's my relationship going to work here? And the teacher was like, yeah, don't ask those questions. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she goes, well, don't ask those questions in class because I don't want you to be made fun of. So just ask them privately. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's why all of my classmates are homophobic, you know, because they don't understand this is completely natural and, you know, equal than any other experience you might have. Whereas if she taught it right alongside straight relationships, then it would be like, oh, okay, it's just another type of relationship then. But mostly the education that we teach in the 20,000 schools is history. That's the number one biggest topic we teach. Computers were invented by Alan Turing, a gay man. You know, the American Revolution. One of the funniest things I think about all the time when I'm talking to any group of teachers or something is, you know, y'all teach how the American Revolution happened, but I ask teachers all the time. So George Washington, he had a wife. What do you think his sexual orientation was? And they'll say, well, he had a wife, so he's straight. I'm like, nope, gay, or at the very least bisexual. So you can now no longer teach about George Washington because he was at least bisexual. There are handwritten notes from him to his male lover, and in those days you could not have political power if you did not have a wife by your side. So you can no longer teach about him to your students because parents might disagree that he had a side relationship. They might, it's not about disagreeing, it's about they may not agree with their child being exposed to a bisexual character. How do you think George Washington won the American Revolution? Okay. Well, some teachers will be like, well, he was a good leader. He was very political and he led the army. I'm like, nope, he did not do any of that. He was very political. In real life, he was very political. He was very good at playing the politics, and that's why he became the first president, but he was not a good military leader. In real life, what happened was a man named Baron Friedrich von Steuben came in. He was a Prussian man, and he was very good at leading the infantry. And his writings are still used by today's U.S. military to train them because he was a brilliant man who also just happened to be gay. He was hired by George Washington and Ben Franklin to lead the infantry of the United States military at the time to win the American Revolution. But he was not very good at cavalry, which is horses. Infantry is the men on foot rushing into battle. Cavalry is the horses running into battle, right? Baron Friedrich von Steuben was very bad at the cavalry side, so they hired a person named Casimir Pulaski. Casimir Pulaski was intersex and was very good at running cavalry operations. Eventually, Casimir Pulaski died in battle one day, but very much was influential in winning the American Revolution. After the revolution was over, Baron Friedrich von Steuben was hired as the first first chief of staff for President Washington when he entered office. And he lasted, I think, the entire term when George Washington was president, but he was the chief of staff. He was in charge of how the Capitol worked at the time. I don't believe it was the White House, because we had different buildings at the time and they were burned down by the Confederates, but whatever. So you have three people at the heart of this story: George Washington, who was bisexual, Baron Friedrich von Steuben, who was gay, and Casimir Pulaski, who was intersex, all LGBTQIA people, but they led the whole military. They're the ones that won this war and became the first president, So now you cannot teach about the American Revolution to your students. So how do you deal with that? How do you tell them the United States became a country if you can't teach them about the three people that made it happen? And you can't teach them about the first president of the United States at all. It's a huge question. There's so many questions that are left unanswered with this decision today that it's just like, what is our education system going to be after this? How does this not run up against the precedent regarding separate but equal, not equal, like the same concept if drawn to its own conclusions, if so similar? There's a good video on Texas and other private schools BS bill from Genetically Modified Skeptic. We'll have to check that out. The logistical nightmare of organizing what books a student is allowed and not allowed to read for every single student in a school, plus it can be ever changing. Yes, that is another good question. If you say at the beginning of the school year, I agree with these books, I don't agree with those books, some schools might come out with a system to do this of, well, your child is not allowed to lend out this book, but they're allowed to lend out this other book. That might be a thing. Other schools are just going to go with the safe option and a lot easier option of your child is just not allowed in the library at all. Like, you opted out of that, because remember, this case is not about reading the book. It's about being exposed to the book. So it's literally going to be a lot of schools across the country are now going to have to say, oh, you opted out of your child seeing that book existed on the shelf at one time. So if you don't agree with every book in the entire library, your child is not going to be allowed in the library because they might see that book. Or they might, it's not about lending the book out, because you can always, I've done it myself plenty of times where, you're in a library and you're just like, hey, before I go lend this book out for a week, let me read a page. see if I like it, So, or let me just scroll through and see if I like the pictures or whatever, right? You can't allow the student to be in a library that book also exists in, because it's not necessarily going to be a situation where they go to the front desk and they say, I want to lend this book out. It might just be they sit there and they read it themselves, if it's a short children's book. You're also talking about, kindergarten through 5th grade, where, you're not having 100, 200, 300, 400 page long books of novels. You're having like picture books for children, so you cannot police that to this level. You're going to have to just say your kid is not allowed in the library, period. And that's what you as a parent opted out of. You're not opting out of this book existing. You're opting out of your child being around it. That's it. So it's literally the most idiotic thing I've ever heard of your, hey, Billy, you can't see that book exists, so everyone else is going to go in the library right now and enjoy themselves and read books and, learn. You have to just sit out here in the hall. Cannot wait for that lawsuit to come down of, Billy's parents being like, well, you didn't allow my child in the library. Well, you opted out of the library access. So, it's going to be an interesting one. The paperwork would be unbearable. Oh my God, yes. We're going to have a lot more paperwork in the education system now. Like, imagine having an ever-changing spreadsheet of every student and every book in the library and trying to record who can read what. Even for private schools, that's no small feat. Yeah. Private schools are ruled by this too. Oh my God. So let me just look this, because this is just such an interesting fact that I want to get. Okay. Okay. For a moment, spare a thought for a librarian who now has to do this. Okay. The average school library across the United States contains around 12,800 books on average. So there's some schools that have way more than that. There's some schools that have less, but 12,000. Imagine giving a parent or a guardian at home a list of 12,800 books and saying, I need you to go through every single one of these titles before the school year begins and check off any ones that you are not okay with your child being around. I think this is going to be the most hilarious thing in the world, of every parent having to sit through a list of 12,000 books and being like, I don't want my kids around that. And then imagine the software program. I can't imagine it's going to be just an Excel sheet or something, because yeah, you're talking about, you're right about that, by the way. On average, how many students? On average, how many students are in a school district? So on average, a U.S. school district has approximately 3,659 students on average. So imagine the nightmare in store for educators now having to get 3,659 sets of parents or guardians. And sure, there's some like siblings in there, so let's conservatively say 3,600, 3,600 parents to review 12,800 books. Okay? 3,600 times 12,000, what was it, 800? Yeah, 800 books. All right. So that's 46,080,000 points of data. Every school in America now has to get 46,080,000 points of data to be allowing students in their school library. Good God. And that's not even including textbooks. That's just books in the library. Oh my God. And it's the parents' fault. You're right. It is the parents' fucking fault that every parent in America now has to go through a list of 12,800 books. Imagine you're a parent out there, right? Is there any parents actually in our audience right now? Because it's a genuine question for you, okay? Just genuine question. If you're a parent out there and you can speak to this, please comment, because I want to know so desperately. I'm not even saying read all pages of all 12,800 books. I'm saying, do you have the time as a parent from, let's say, August 1st to August 30th or whatever whenever school begins in your district? Do you have time in August? Because there's no way this list is going to come out in June or July. You know, schools are going to have to come out with this later, like in August, because they just don't have the time to come out with it right now. They need time to prepare this list. So if you're a parent in the audience right now, please answer me. Do you have the time in August to read through a list of 12,800 book titles, let alone research them and agree to what's in them? I do not know a single parent who has time for that. Good luck. Good luck finding one that does. If you're a parent out there, please. Oh my God. I just don't understand. Years ago, I don't know if you remember, years ago, conservatives used to say that, free speech is gone. There was, funny enough, we were driving through a town. I'm not going to say which town, just because I don't want y'all to Google it. We were on our way to a Pride event this June, and we saw this guy like on a street corner. Not what you think. No, we saw this guy on a street corner with a sign that just said, legalize comedy again. And so I was so curious. Guys. Okay, my husband carries a firearm everywhere we go. I have one around almost all the time. So I know I'm well protected, put it that way, if the guy tried anything. So I had to ask, I'm like, what are you talking? Comedy. We have freedom of speech in this country. What are you talking about? Comedy, or legalize comedy again? What the hell are you talking about? And he goes, oh, like we're all so sensitive now that we're banning, the damn libs are banning every other word, and every liberal is trying to get us to all make comedy, like non-existent. And I'm like, so I let it go. I just wanted to get the guy's opinion. We went to our Pride event. We, enjoyed ourselves. We met a lot of great fans out there. Thank you for coming. And then, and I'm sitting there on the way home with my husband in the passenger seat, and we're talking about it. And we kind of just realized everything conservatives say, and it really does help, actually. now knowing sort of how things work in America, everything conservatives say is an admission of guilt. Everything they accuse us of is an admission of guilt. It's so much easier knowing that in your heart. That's just like, oh, well, now I can have an easier time, you know? It helps with so many things. So when you look at this situation, who's the one banning books? Liberals don't ban books. You can read the Bible. You can read the Quran. You can, whatever you want. Liberals do not ban books. Liberals might say, hey, you should call me by the proper pronouns, but it's your free speech. You are perfectly allowed to not call someone by the proper pronouns or the proper name. Doesn't mean you're not a dick, and it doesn't mean that you will do well in your career, because a lot of companies do not put up with that. But you're perfectly allowed to do it. It's freedom of speech. Doesn't mean freedom of consequence, but it's freedom of speech, right? So we're not banning books. They're the ones banning speech. They're the ones saying, hey, you're not allowed to have my kid around that book, right? They're the ones in Florida that literally emptied out hundreds of libraries in the entire state because they didn't want kids exposed that gay people existed, right? I forget which state it is. Is it Oklahoma? Is it Oklahoma? I want to see if it's Oklahoma. I'll try this banning. Let's look this up. Yeah, okay. So Oklahoma is considering a bill to ban adult websites in the entire state. So it's like, here's SB 593 that would classify the production, distribution, or possession of adult films as a criminal offense punishable by up to 10 years in prison. The bill, what? What the hell, Oklahoma? What? Is anyone from Oklahoma in the audience that can confirm? Oh my God. February 5th, 2025? Oh my God. That's this year. What are you doing, Oklahoma? Okay. Anytime you have a question of how dumb America can be, look at Oklahoma's legislator. Just for context for the rest of the world here, if y'all have a question of how dumb America is, just please focus on Oklahoma. It's probably a good bet. I'm not saying it's going to pass. I'm just saying there was a bill introduced by Senator Shane Jett that tried to ban it. I don't know if it's even near passing, but oh my God, that is, yeah. So liberals didn't want you to use the wrong pronouns or name, but conservatives are the ones saying that you cannot read books, you cannot, as an adult, access adult websites, or film, or distribute anything. Wow. Okay. Yeah. There's so many. Yes. Not what you're thinking of. Yeah. It's not just straight up the P word. I can't say it because y'all, it's on YouTube and they'll ban me. But it's not just straight up adult films that you walk into an adult shop to get. It's literal, or a certain hub website that you can find it on. It's literally just any film that has an X rating, or oh my God, y'all are Oklahoma, you never disappointed. How stupid. So Yeah, they're the ones that are banning all of this stuff, and yet we're like, and yet they say that we're after their freedom of speech, we're after their freedom of religion. It's like, you're the ones trying to tell every kid, not just your own, but every kid, what they should learn. You know, how soon is it going to be that parents say, okay, we don't want our kid exposed to this book in the library, so now is the school going to say, look, we're going to ban Billy from entering the library? Or are we going to just take that book off of the shelves so that when Billy goes into the library, he's not exposed to it? And he has no chance of being exposed to it. So now that book is not available to all the other students. So wouldn't those parents now have a lawsuit against the school of, my child is not able to be exposed to a book that I allowed them to be exposed to? It's an entirely interesting question that is going to come up in lawsuits. And meanwhile, what we're talking about here, remember, millions of dollars are spent on this, on these lawsuits. So the only ones really winning out are the law firms getting all this money. Like, you're now going to have parents suing on both sides of the coin of, I'm not allowing Billy to access this book. And then you have, you know, I as a parent allow my Sarah to be around this book, but you're taking it off the shelves. So they're both suing the school. Both are probably going to win their lawsuits, by the way, because this new Supreme Court ruling just gave parental rights to an absurd level. So both sides are going to win. Both sides are going to get paid out massive settlements. And in the middle is the school district that's already hemorrhaging money. Like, taxpayers are going to pay out probably billions of dollars. Billions because of this. Our education system is the F word. I do appreciate y'all, like, were here and y'all commented every once in a while. All of a sudden I mentioned the Oklahoma case of them banning adult films, and y'all are like, oh, a million comments. Y'all got upset at that one. Sorry, just an observation. Yeah, I mean, it is a chance they'll just remove the library. That's a good point, actually. Like, would they just remove all the like, if a parent went through all 12,800 books, baffling if they have time. So they're probably just going to skim the list and be like, that sounds bad. But then once if they're on a Facebook group like Moms for Liberty or something like that, would it not be argued that later on they might realize a book was about a gay character and then go back to the school and say, oh, I forgot this one, you know, or I just learned what that book was about, you know? So that's another point of, well, now you can have any parent calling in any day of the week and asking, hey, don't allow my, you know, little Billy around that book now. Add him to my, you know, banned book list. So is a library even going to be a thing? I mean, nowadays with technology, my husband had a conversation with me a couple days ago. We had a very good debate. We go on a lot of drives around where we live, just to go for a drive and enjoy ourselves. And we go to like new restaurants or an ice cream shop or something like that, you know, and we'll just enjoy a town, you know, or we'll find like a little gift shop in that town and just explore, you know. Truthfully, we're kind of looking for a place to, you know, buy a house, and we're kind of looking for a good area to do that in. but it's also just for fun. So we'll go out and we'll enjoy ourselves. And on these long drives, we have very riveting conversations about politics or different things. We don't agree on everything, but we do agree on most things. He's my best friend, and I'm very, very happy to say that. But on this one day, we had a good conversation about y'all are weird. First the rainforest, then the icebergs, now libraries. I'm just getting worse and worse, I swear. Yeah, that 100%. But we had a very good conversation about them just banning everything, or like what we thought about it. And by the way, my husband and I never turn the radio on in our car. I don't think it's been on ever. When I'm driving by myself, I turn Spotify on, and I turn on very gay stuff or Taylor Swift. But anyway, we're having this conversation, and the level that parents have got now, we don't think that the education system for our kids will be anything like what we had. We think that that's gone, you know. It's just a matter of what is going to survive, you know. What if they do get rid of the entire library? I have the argument, and my what is the story about pengrooms? No, this was different book, not pengrooms. Pengrooms was that. Remind me in a second. I will talk about that very effed up story. So we're talking about technology in school, where students no longer have like textbooks. In the high school that I used to go to, and I graduated from, does not have textbooks anymore. They have iPads going around, you know. Well, this is my teleprompter, but they have iPads, and all of their textbooks are on this. And so rather than carrying a giant heavy backpack around, they get to carry an iPad. And I love that idea, actually, because you can access all of the books right on here and, you know, highlight, make notes, whatever you need to do. I love the idea, right? It's so much more efficient. It's a little more costly up front to buy a whole bunch of, you know, whole bunch of iPads or tablets, but at the end of the day, you're not spending money all the time on like, oh, well, we need 5 new books because this year 5 were ruined, you know. Hopefully they take care of them, you know. And you're saving every kid from having a backpack walking around, and so now there's no place for them to hide weapons or stuff like that. So it's a lot more efficient, and it's a lot safer of a program, I believe. That's my opinion. My husband thinks textbooks still have a legitimate cause in a school, and I think that's also has an argument to be made. You know, it could be argued you should learn how to read a book, physical book, instead of always on some form of technology. Because what if one day technology doesn't exist anymore, and we have, you know, a world where, you know, you have to read a physical map rather than go on Google Maps, you know. There's a reason why my Boy Scout days come in handy a lot, because, you know, Wi-Fi isn't always available, and you have to figure out where you are. Or in, you know, a world where Trump is president, you know, we very likely enter a nuclear holocaust with this president, and you have to learn how to survive without access to Google Maps. So it's a very interesting conversation we had about all that. But it begs the question in those schools now, well, is the iPad going to have restrictions on it of you as a parent opt out of certain books, and then that book is just taken off of the hard drive automatically, or off of that student's access under their account? be an interesting way to do it. It's a little more expensive, but that's a lot better than a physical library. So physical libraries might go away entirely just because of the invention of technology, but it's going to be a very interesting case to see how schools react to this now, knowing that we are end of June and school starts in August. Like, we're less than 2 months away from them starting school again. How is every school district across America going to react to this case of Mahmoud versus Taylor? It's a very interesting case, a huge setback for us. Now, I will also say, there is a case of the penguin rooms, okay? That's been going viral on TikTok. Just for the record, I hate TikTok. It's a terrible platform run by a Chinese Communist Party. So just putting that out there initially. So there was an author who came out and made a video a long time ago. This goes back a little bit. This is not about this case. This is totally different. Why is my camera so weird? Hi. Low. There we go. There's focus again. So he made a video a long time ago that said, he was basically crying in the video, and he's like, my book Pengrooms was just banned from Florida. Okay, now here's the thing. Florida never really put out a list of, here are the books that are banned. They never said that. It's not like, oh, here, these 100 books are banned. No, they put out a list that said any book about that list a sexual orientation or a gender identity is now banned, right? So in a public library or school library. So they said that if your book is talking about a straight couple getting married, it's now banned, right? So technically he wasn't wrong. His book was banned from Florida. So was mine. All of my books were banned from Florida public libraries. We're still in some of them. Anyway, so right after that, Don't Say Gay law went into effect. YouTube sponsored our channel for a while and helped us get the education into Florida anyway, but our books are actually banned from the book library now because of that law being in effect. We're still in private libraries down in Florida, and we're still, selling our books in Florida. It's just a matter of the public libraries don't put them on the shelves legally. So there are some ripples. Which I love. So he made this video crying that his book is now banned. It's like, yeah, but it wasn't just yours, So the whole gay community is suffering. Maybe not a moment to say, feel bad for me as one author. It was sort of viewed terribly by the gay community for him trying to act this way. I, as an author, was upset as well, but it's not like I came out and said, please pity me for this. It's just a matter of the whole community is suffering. It's a moment where you come together as a community and say, we need to fight against this, not necessarily for just one book. We need free speech here for us. We have free speech too, and they just banned our free speech. So that happened a couple years ago. All of a sudden, he comes out with another video, I believe last week. I might be wrong on that. Might have been 2 weeks ago. But it went viral because there's, 100 cardboard boxes behind him in the video. And he's like saying how his book publisher asked him to change the title of his book, Pen Grooms, to something different. Otherwise, they could not publish it in to store shelves across America. It's weird, right? Because my book publisher has never asked for that sort of thing. They've never asked for redesigns of the cover. Like, they've trusted my covers and my titles for a long time now. I have, okay, just, I want to have context for this. Wasn't prepared for this subject, but we're going to get into it because it's another very interesting bookcase. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Hold on. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 25, 26, 27, 28, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 37, just 1 second, sorry. 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 44, 45, 6, 7, 8. Uh-huh.
Your phone's
I'm on camera, by the way.
Your phone's dropping up the wall.
Okay. Okay. My husband's here.
Thanks for warning me.
Well, I told you I'm recording a video. Why is it going off the wall? Anyway, I'll handle it. Thank you.
What's going on? You doing a live stream?
Yeah, we're live right now.
Hello, everybody.
He's hold on.
Well, hold on. I'm in my underwear.
Okay. He's in his underwear.
Yeah, I'm working.
He's working. He works from home as an insurance adjuster. No one ever said. Anyway.
Have a good day.
Tell your husband we said hi. Hi. So anyway, not even kidding here. That there's a reason I was counting. I'm an author. I actually forgot how many I was. I'm an author of 37 books. Okay. I have a publisher. I know what it means to have critiques on your books. Not once did any of my books require a retitle or different subtitle. You know, there's been like publishing things of like, oh, hey, put a comma here, or you misspelled this, please fix it before we go to print, you know. There's been things like that. It's never been change the title of your entire book and change the cover. It's never been that, right? And you can argue my publisher might be better than this guy's publisher. I don't know, right? Why would you sign a gay author if you're going to make him change the title and cover of his book to be against gay stuff? Why would you do that, right? It makes no sense. Or why would you as an author sign a contract with a publisher that would require such a thing, right? So it was a very big question for a lot of authors out there who were like, hey, we've signed deals like this. Why would you do this? Why would the publishing company do this? Why would you do this as an author too, you know? But he made this giant video where he's like, yeah, they asked me to change the title and the cover for my book. And they wanted it to be toned down gay. So it had nothing to do with gay couple on the front, you know? And he's so sad because as he goes on in the video, he says he had to manufacture hundreds of copies or something like that of the new book with a new title. It's like, okay, so first off, your publishing company is the publisher. They publish that's literally the definition of a publisher. They would never ask you as an author to buy hundreds of copies of your own book manufactured a different way. They would never do that, right? So when a real publishing company comes to you, they say, okay, So you wrote a book, great. We're going to pay you royalties every time that we sell one. Okay. They're going to manufacture it because they're the publisher. They take all of the cost of printing it and they print it out hundreds, thousands of times, whatever, right? What? Anyway, so for this guy, there was no reason for him to print hundreds of copies of his book other than his own, like maybe his own like self. When you're like at shows or some of that, you might have a copy or some of that. For instance, when we're at Pride events, I do buy my own book at printing cost. So why is my camera seriously like that? Anyway, it'll sort itself out. Anyway, so sorry, my camera's being weird. Anyway, you can still hear me. So he might, like when we're doing a live event, I'll buy like 10 copies of every book or something like that at printing cost, and then that way we sell it at whatever price we normally do. And that does happen for shows and events. But this guy was probably, what are you doing? I'm trying to figure out the camera, honey. I'm gonna ban my own husband from commenting. So anyway, this guy says that he was required by his publisher to manufacture hundreds of copies of his book with a new title and new graphics on the front. But a publisher would never do that. A publisher would never ask that question. So what is he even talking about? And if they did, let's say in the rare chance that they actually did ask him to do this, where's the proof? Where are those hundreds of copies at? And where's that contract at? Because I guarantee you, if he made a deal like that, where he had to manufacture hundreds of copies of his own book to sign with this publisher, they would have some sort of stipulation in the contract that would be like, oh, the publisher is taking some of this risk too. And if you go out and publish hundreds of copies, or you manufacture hundreds of copies of your own book, the publisher has a requirement to get them into stores or something like that in the contract. There was nothing that he could show for this. So he did name a couple names in the video alleging this, of different bookstores that he was saying that his books were banned from. So then the owners of those bookstores come out in videos and they're like, well, we only work with one publisher and we only sell books for one publishing company. So that must be the publishing company you're talking about. And we have a lot of gay books on our shelves. So there's no reason they would ask you to change the title of your book to be on the shelves in our store, because we don't require that for any other book in the entire store. And they point out like other books that are on their shelves currently, they're showing pictures of like, look, this is our shelf. We have tons of LGBTQ books on our shelves. We don't ever require an author to change the title or graphics on their book. So why would you do this? So this video by this author guy is making no sense to any publisher, making no sense to any store owner, making no sense to a lot of the people that are watching. And it pretty much is assumed at this point, allegedly, that all the boxes behind him were empty. And now the publisher, who is supposedly real, is questioning, like, they're, let me put it this way, they're a real publishing company. Whether they ever signed him as an author, I have no idea. But because of the stores that he named in the video, everyone can kind of figure out which publishing company he was talking about or alleging this whole thing happened with. So now they have a legitimate claim to a lawsuit civilly against this author guy because he's alleging that they're forcing him to be less gay in his book. So it's like, but if they're a pro-gay publishing company and they never did it, now he's slandering this publishing company that he may or may not have been signed with in the first place. So is he just killing off whatever deal he might have had with any publishing company because he's alleging this? It's a very interesting case to follow. It's going to be interesting to see if any lawsuits come from it. But that is the story of the Pengrooms. Let me make sure that's the right title. It is the Pengrooms, right? I think so. So, yeah. Anyway, it was a very viral video this week on TikTok, and a lot of people are very upset about it. So just be warned if you're seeing a video out there about a guy with a bunch of cardboard boxes behind him saying like, my publisher made me change the title of my book. At least question it. I'm not saying it's true or not true. I'm just saying that, there's a lot of people that are store owners that are saying that they don't have any questions like that. So are there any other states with the don't say gay law? Let me see. U.S. gay law. All right. Yes, there are. Teachers in North Carolina, Arkansas, Iowa, and India. Sorry, no, not India. Oh my God, it's been a long day. Teachers in North Carolina, Arkansas, Iowa, and Indiana are beginning their school years with similar laws in 2023-24 season. So North Carolina's legislature overrode Governor Roy Cooper's veto in August 2022. Just because I'm trying to date things back, making it the fourth state to pass a Don't Say Gay law in 2023. Iowa and Indiana passed similar bills into law in May 2023, and Arkansas passed their copycat law in March 2023. So it's Florida, North Carolina, Arkansas, Iowa, and Indiana are all with a Don't Say Gay law. It's not Arkansas, it's Arkansas. There's an S at the end. My God, my husband. Look, I'm from an area of the country where we pronounce every syllable, okay? Oh, man. Oh, no, it's more than, I'm sorry, it's way more than that. Alabama advanced a measure prohibiting early classroom instruction on sexual and gender identity. That's just a bill, though. These are just bills. Okay, that's good. An Arizona bill aims to change the state's sex ed curriculum to focus on biological sex and not gender identities. In neighboring Georgia, lawmakers targeted private schools, which the state can regulate, but it failed to get any traction this year in 2022. Iowa, a state Senate proposal would require that parents opt in writing to any instruction relating to gender identity. In Louisiana, lawmakers introduced HB 837. It would limit discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in some grades and prohibit it altogether in some others. A South Carolina bill is similar. A Missouri bill would ban gender or sexual diversity training in public schools. An Indiana bill does the same, as would a Kentucky bill. In Oklahoma, a Senate bill would ban books from the school libraries that focus on the study of sex, sexual lifestyles, or sexual activity. That's a quote. Tennessee's HB 800 bans books from instructional materials that promote, normalize, support, or address lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender issues or lifestyle. Ohio HB 616 has similar language used in the Florida bill. We need to make a don't say Arkansas law. Oh my God. My husband, everyone. Welcome to the chat. Shouldn't you be working right now? I am working. Don't you have claims to work on? What's the copycat law? Sorry, I don't look at politics by choice if I can. So a copycat, it's a bill without on law. I forget what state. So copycat bills and laws are basically where, well, it can mean two things. First, it could mean that an organization like Moms for Liberty, some sort of hate group out there, or law firm, let's say. He just did an episode about this. Let me look up the actual name. We're gonna get the facts here. Sorry. All right. Sorry. What was the episode? It was just this season, literally just this season. Oh. Alliance Defending Freedom. Okay, there we go. All right. So things that made it illegal in Arkansas to mispronounce their state name. Last I checked, it's Is it not Arkansas? Where I'm from, it's from Arkansas. Okay. Anyway, he also says Illinois. It drives me insane. Shame on you. Anyway, so my husband makes fun of my talking. It's not, well, see, I don't say Kansas. I say Kansas. But I just say, I'm from Alabama. Alabama's easy to say. It's the one with the S's at the end. It's weird. Anyway, so a group like Alliance Defending Freedom or someone, or another far-right hate group will write a bill for a legislator, right? And they'll come out to a congressman and they'll say, hey, it's really hard to do your job, even though, how much? Even though House of Representatives members make a salary of $174,000 a year starting. So, and hey, I know your $174,000 a year job is really hard to literally, the only thing you do is write bills and debate bills, but you know, I know it's really hard to do that job for only $174,000. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to write the bill for you. We're going to write the legislation without you having to lift a finger. We're just going to give you the PDF at the end. Our lawyers will write it for you. You take that bill and you introduce it into the House or the Senate. And so that's what these representatives or senators do. A lot more often than you might think. Is where private organizations, private companies, and nonprofits will write bills for legislator. And they'll just take those bills, word for word, and hand them to the legislator. So that's called a copycat bill, where they just, copycat what the organization put forward, because they didn't want to many times even read it before they proposed it into legislation. It still needs to be voted on and everything, but if you have a lot of money coming from, wow, that's a really random question. Do you ever get your money back from U-Haul? I'll explain in a second. Oh, that's an interesting story too. Anyway, so it's been a while since I was live streaming. Wow. So yeah, they'll write that for a legislator, and the legislator will put it forward. So hopefully it gets voted on. But there's typically enough money going into lobbying efforts on a certain side, so that way that bill just gets passed. Many times completely unread. So when these lawmakers get questioned on, well, why did you write this in that bill? And they're like, what are you talking about? I never even read it. And it's like, well, weren't you the one to write it? You sign your name at the bottom, you know? And they're like, oh, yeah, well, I totally wrote that. Sure, it wasn't just Alliance Defending Freedom writing it for me. It's so weird. And then also a copycat bill would be considered. Let's say Florida passed theirs or even proposed a bill for a Don't Say Gay, and then Kentucky's like, hey, that's a good idea. We want to ban books too. So rather than writing their own legislation, they will just literally verbatim take the bill that was proposed in Florida and propose it in their own state. So both are considered copycat bills. U-Haul. Oh, such an interesting story. Okay, so if you're not familiar, we had a lot of problems with U-Haul years ago. And when I was moving in with my husband, we rented a U-Haul truck, and they said, look, here's the price of what it's going to be. And we agreed to it. And then they backed out of the deal. And they said, look, you can't just take this truck from this location to that location and drop it off at another location. You have to bring it back to the original location. And I'm like, that's not what we agreed to, because I'm moving one way. I'm not coming back that day. I'm not coming back that week. You know, I'm moving. That's it. That's my final, that's my bed. That's my everything. Like that's the final trip, you know? And it was a long trip. But they said, you know, you have to come back with it, and you have to bring the truck back to where we originally rented it to you. And so we did, because the guy was really super nice to us at the local location. But then they charged us the extra miles, and I'm like, no, you're the one who required me to come back, so you can't charge me the extra miles for it. We fought with them. I spent about a day and a half on the phone with them. And eventually their team said, sorry, Charlie. So we went to our credit card company, did a chargeback. At that point, I think they owed us like $27 in pay because of the extra mileage charge. The bank ended up issuing us a refund for $25. And they said, look, if you're willing to settle this for $25, we're allowed to settle up to that number, and we'll just give you this $25 out of the money that you gave U-Haul. And they just, you take a $2 loss, they take a $25 loss. And I'm like, you know what? It's not worth the $2 to fight for 3 months over. Let's just do it, right? So then we made the video about U-Haul. And here's where this gets interesting. Every August and every May, that video blows up to no end. All right. So every single time that college kids are moving to and from college campuses, this video blows up. Not because college kids are looking up the video. It's because U-Haul Corporate It's because U-Haul corporate is forcing it in the algorithm, and it's so weird. So here's my belief, okay? So every May and every August, we get a ton of comments on that video about U-Haul saying never rent from U-Haul. Try any other company, I don't care. Never rent from U-Haul. There's a lot of terrible things that we experienced. The money was just one of the issues. So every year we get probably a good 100 or so. I don't know, my husband can chime in on this. Probably 100 or so comments that are all copied and pasted. Same exact thing, same exact wording. I don't know why, right? And it's all these people who in the comment claim, I am a U-Haul dealer and this is not how it works. I am a U-Haul dealer and we don't charge an extra couple cents per mile. I'm a U-Haul dealer. And I'm like, so it's all these people saying that they're U-Haul dealers in the comments of my video condemning U-Haul. Now, all of the things I say in that video are backed up by evidence that I show you in the video. And it's hilarious that these U-Haul dealers are like, oh, that's not true. Here, I brought receipts, bitch, you know? Like, I'm showing you everything. So that's always amusing to me. But I've realized this is just copied and pasted because it's a whole bunch of people saying the same thing. It's from different accounts. So what amuses me so much is I am under the full impression that some email is sent out from U-Haul corporate. And one person actually replied to me and said, look, I just got an email from corporate about this video. And they told me to come here and back it up. Back U-Haul up. And I'm like, what in the world? You know? So allegedly, U-Haul corporate is sending out their dealers to go comment on videos like this and saying that don't trust the creator who brought receipts, right? So just to give you some context, yes, I lost $2 on this deal. And I got to make a video about it, right? Because I brought receipts. And yeah, it's a very fun video. Now, let me look it up here. Analytics. Can I look up analytics? Yeah. Yeah. So the video has 10,000 views now. And some of them are about from U-Haul corporate, I'm sure. Yeah, it's 39-minute long video, which means there's mid-roll ads on it. We've made our $2 back. I just wanted to confirm it from that video, but we made our $2 back. So yeah, we did win that case with our bank. We did get, they lost $25 of it. We lost $2 on the deal. And then we got to make a video about it. And every May and every August, when college kids are going to school or going home, it goes a little more viral, and we made our $2 back. So let's just say that U-Haul video probably paid for a rental truck for our next movie. So I'm quite happy. We should do one about Carvana. Carvana sucks. Oh my God. Yeah, that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But I won't get into that too much here. I honestly wish Libs of TikTok would just be sued by the LGBT community. She has been sued before. Her argument is always, well, she's just sharing information. And the FBI has literally classified her as a terrorist group. So, you know, interesting. And I do love how the FBI No, here's the thing. I have many good experiences with the FBI. They've helped me on numerous occasions. I have worked with FBI agents before for my job. We've gotten death threats on the show before. I do work with the FBI to ensure the safety of my family and the safety of myself. They've put 24/7 surveillance on my entire family before. And now some of those family members that got those protections are, now Trumpers. So it's interesting. But I will say they're very good at their jobs before Trump took over. But it's always odd to me hearing that the FBI classified Libs of TikTok as a terrorist group and then never put her in jail. How can you be considered a terrorist group? You're very public about where you live in LA. She currently sits on the education board in Oklahoma, even though she does not live in Oklahoma and has no kids at all. She lives in LA. The FBI is well aware of where she lives. She's been interviewed many times at her own address. And yet the FBI is like, yeah, you're a terrorist, but we're not going to lock you up. We're not even going to charge you. We're just going to call you a terrorist. How can you consider someone a terrorist and then not put them behind bars? I don't understand that. So the FBI is fun under Trump. It's a interesting dilemma to work with. The people that literally would, should be charging Trump with treason for January 6th are the same people now under his command. I don't know how that works. Anyone that lives in Russia will probably attest to, wow, this looks eerily similar to how KGB works. Did you, if you saw, what it reminds me of is the Tucker Carlson interview with Ted Cruz, where Ted Cruz is like, yeah, there are assassins that Iran sent to kill the president of the United States, right? And regardless of your feelings on Donald Trump, which I am definitely against, convicted felon Donald Trump aside from this whole situation, all right? If there were truly assassins hired by Iran to kill the sitting president of the United States, regardless of who they might be, why would you not, as a senator, be sending military to go invade Iran? And it was a good question that Tucker Carlson posed to Ted Cruz in this recent interview. And Ted Cruz's answer, well, they're not very good assassins. And Tucker Carlson's like, wait, so it depends on how good they are? Like, what? Yeah, it was a very, very funny interview. It's 2 hours long, but it's probably the funniest thing that I've watched. My husband has watched in a good year. Like we haven't had a laugh like that in a long time watching that interview. But it's a very interesting interview. Anyway, so we're watching it, and it reminds me of that. It's honestly like one of those moments of like, well, yeah, technically Libs of TikTok is a terrorist, but she's not one of the bad terrorists. We don't want to arrest her because arresting her is for bad terrorists. Like what? What is this world where you can be something and you're not arrested for it? Like oh, so there's good terrorists now? Like what? Or we can arrest felons, but if you're Donald Trump, you're not one of those bad felons. You're just convicted of a crime. You're convicted of 30 some odd felony charges, but we're not gonna put you behind bars for that because you're rich. You're rich. You make too much money to be. You sell golden phones that are not made in America. Yeah. Well, why would we put you behind bars because you're a convicted felon? Like that's ridiculous. You're rich. You know. You're a billionaire because you stole billions of dollars from American taxpayers. You know. Like you were a millionaire, and then you became a billionaire once you became president because you run an entire empire of, a very lucrative cryptocurrency network, and yeah, it's kind of weird. Just saying. So Tucker Carlson was like a spider playing with a fly. Yeah, so it was quite hilarious. It was one of the better ones we watched. It's so weird to like see the dichotomy of how things are right now in politics. I mean, this court case aside, it's funny to see that we now are like, oh my God, Tucker Carlson held Ted Cruz to the fire a little bit. Like, what? How am I sitting here for 2 hours rooting for Tucker Carlson? Or now Marjorie Taylor Greene is sending out tweets against Donald Trump. And you're like, how am I on Marjorie Taylor Greene's side? How is this possible? She fucking hates my guts as a gay person. Like, she wants me to die. She's advocated for things that wants me to die. Like, how am I on her side? Like, how am I, like, if, you know what, if Marjorie Taylor Greene is the person to invoke articles of impeachment against him and it works, I will, support Marjorie Taylor Greene. How am I saying this? Republicans, it's weird. You build your house of cards on hate, and then you expect the people that also hate to never hate you, no matter what decision you ever make, And it's like, I cannot wait for this house of cards to come crumbling down. And I just hope that Democrats have something ready for when that house finally crumbles, because it honestly doesn't feel like they have anything ready. So yeah. But the fun part, okay, see you mentioned U-Haul bots. The fun part about the U-Haul situation is, even if it is bots that U-Haul sends to videos like it just makes it appear higher in the search results all May and August. So college kids who are looking into this are finding this as a top search result. And they're like, oh, well, thank you for telling me. Now I'm never going to rent from them. So, thanks, U-Haul. I mean, the amount of money that video has probably cost U-Haul from people not renting is hilarious to me. It's almost like they should have given me my $27 back. Almost. There's, put it this way, there's a lot of situations where I, as a YouTuber, get into, and I'm like, oh, if you only knew what kind of like following our channel has, I'd be like, oh, so you're gonna give me the $27 back now? Because I can make a video. It's kind of fun. But yeah, or just maybe you shouldn't have sleazy business tactics. Yeah, that's true. Anyway. So anyway, the court case is out there now, and it's a really, really shitty day. So it's going to be very interesting to see this is another landmark case, but what is going to be so interesting is the fallout. How many millions of dollars are we going to have to spend as a country And what is the education system going to look like after this? Is it possible for the Epstein files to be leaked to the public? Yes, it is. Look, I'm just saying it was already confirmed by somebody who read them. So, look, I don't love Elon Musk. I hate his guts, but he did leak some information. And now that information is out there, I would love for Trump to sue Elon Musk, alleging that this is slander. Because the only way to prove it then, in court, they have what's called discovery. Something that my husband and I are very familiar with because we're both insurance adjusters. So discovery is basically a time in a lawsuit where both sides get in all the information from the other side. So let's say Donald Trump sued Elon Musk for even insinuating that he's on the Epstein list. Musk lawyers would then say, hey, part of our discovery is we want all the Epstein files. And once it's in discovery, it is part of public court records, which then means everyone can see it. So if his name is legitimately there in the Epstein files, it would be part of the discovery. And I would love for that to be leaked that way. Of Elon Musk takes down Donald Trump. I would love that more than anything. I still won't like Elon Musk, and I still won't buy a Tesla, but it would be funny to me. It would be the biggest irony in the world of he's his own downfall. He hired his own downfall. What's the chance Elon is also on that list? I'm not sure about Elon being on the list. I'm not really. Look, a lot of very famous people were on that list. It's just funny to me that the far right is massively against the LGBTQ community, alleging without probable cause or any real legitimate information that they are against our community because they believe we are all pedophiles, which is not true in the slightest. By and large, factual information and studies have been done on this, and there are massively more, pedophiles in the straight community than there are the gay community at all. But, for them to say that they're completely against gay people because they believe something about us, it's kind of disheartening to hear them go, let's protect the kids. Meanwhile, they're like, oh yeah, Donald Trump is 99.9% probably on the Epstein files. And on camera has said that he wants to have sexual intercourse with his own daughter, and yet they vote for him anyway. It's like the guy literally admitted to wanting a relationship with his own daughter, and y'all are like, oh, let's vote for him. Meanwhile, to hell with the gays. Like, you're alleging that we are something. But first off, my husband is older than me. I have been called many names by the far right over the years because of my education stuff. My husband is older than me. I love him more than life itself. I don't think I've dated one guy that was younger than me, but it was like 2 years. So yeah, how dare I love my husband? Yes. Anyway, so they allege this about me, and I'm like, okay, I have an older husband, than me, and your presidential candidate might be on the Epstein files and has said that he wants to do his own daughter, I'm sorry. I find something more wrong about that than I find with anything I've ever done. Like, I mean, you can look at a lot of different cases of a lot of bad things people have done over the years. I would argue someone being on the Epstein list and becoming president then voted in by those people that hate Epstein. I mean, you look at the situation, you're like, so these people that are far right hate Democrats, alleging that they kill babies for the blood and eat them in the, like, okay, so this is QAnon for you. This is a lesson in the far right. The right, if you're not from America, this is going to sound very jarring. Welcome to America. But no. So seriously, the far right in this country believes that Democrats kill babies, drink their blood to become more youthful, and they slaughter them in the basement of a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. that does not even have a basement at all. And they inject bleach into their body to kill the COVID. And they allege that that Democrats do a lot of other things, like groom our children, because we have books available about gay people. But yet, if you do your history research here, you'll know that, what was it, 1,500 priests were convicted of molesting children in like a couple years ago. And priests routinely get moved from diocese to diocese in the Catholic Church because they don't want the parishioners to find out that they're, molesting kids. It's the far right that went to Jeffrey Epstein's island. Some Democrats, but not a whole lot. Yeah, it's a really, really messed up world where they're like, oh, we're going to accuse you of something that we're far worse at, Like, trying to find evidence of what they allege is baffling because all you have to look is at the far right. How many January 6ers were like arrested immediately after for other things of like trafficking children and molesting children? Like, how many of them were arrested for other things immediately after? Like, and yet they think that they're on this some sort of moral high ground. Yes, my husband goes, I'll be honest, I would not be willing to try infant as a pizza topping. No. No. I how do I respond to that, honey? Don't know how I respond to that on a live stream. Anyway. Yes. It's a weird world where they are alleging everything that they're pretty much doing. So anytime you want to know what a Republican is doing, just look at what their speeches say about us. It's like, oh, wow. For instance, one interesting one here is, you know how Trump kept saying that the 2020 election was stolen? And now a federal judge has ruled that they have to recount votes in New York because there's a county in New York where lower ballot people had Democrats voted in massively, and not one single person voted for Kamala Harris in New York, one of the most liberal states in the country. I mean, if you're going to try to rig an election and steal it, maybe don't try to rig it in New York. Like, zero votes to the Democratic candidate on ballots from people who voted everything else Democrat. I don't even know how they thought they would get away with that. But yeah, so it's going to be a very interesting couple months trying to see how the Supreme Court decisions today pan out, and how schools deal with it. It's also going to be very interesting to see how, you know, the election count goes. I mean, it's also going to be interesting to see Trump's reaction to today's court cases, because a lot of them sided with him. And will he suddenly say, oh, I like the Supreme Court again because they now side with me? I guarantee you that's something on Fox News today. That's a weird pizza topping, especially since I eat pizza a lot. Yeah. So the allegation was that Democrats kill babies in the basement of a pizza shop in Washington and drink their blood to remain youthful. And I'm going to and for those outside the US, you might be utterly horrified by this. Someone went to the pizza shop with an AR-15 rifle to save the children from this basement. They were arrested, and the police, before they put him in the cop car, the police took this person to every cabinet, every closet, every door in this pizza shop. Unbelievably, at the pizza shop's request, the owner of the pizza shop's there, right? And he's like, what the hell is this guy alleging about my place of business? Why is this guy saying there's a basement that we kill babies in, right? And so the owner of this pizza shop is literally says to the cops, right? This is in the police report, by the way. Like, so he says to the cops, okay, before you take this guy away to jail, do me a favor, go through my whole shop. Take this guy on a tour of my entire shop. Open every cabinet, open every door. I don't care. Show this guy there is no freaking basement in this building. So they go around. The police and this guy cannot find any basement that exists at all. There's no basement. There's no bottom floor because it's in Washington, D.C. It's built in a swamp. There's no basement in nearly any building other than the White House. Okay? Why does this guy think that there's a basement there? Why does anyone think there's a basement in this pizza shop? So they didn't find any basement. And so they asked the guy, like, wait, okay, so you went there to save the children. Who is doing this, by the way? Like, the police asked this guy, like, this whole far right narrative. Who are they alleging is drinking the blood from all these kids? And this guy's like, oh yeah, Oprah Winfrey is drinking the blood of kids to remain looking youthful. And so I'm reading this years ago and I'm like, have y'all ever looked up a picture of Oprah Winfrey? She's a wonderful woman. But I don't know if you've seen any recent photos of her. She does not look youthful. That is not the first word I would describe her as. Rich, powerful, very nice woman, not youthful. So if this allegation were to be true, would she not look youthful? I'm like, what the hell? Oh. So yeah, that's America, where people literally go into pizza shops with guns trying to save kids that aren't there, from a basement that's not there, from a woman drinking their blood that's not youthful. Welcome to free speech land. So yeah, stop insulting Oprah. She'll destroy us both. No, if Oprah's watching this, and Oprah's amazing. We love Oprah as a person, and as a producer, she produces pretty good stuff, pretty good shows and stuff. But yeah, it's and yet we're the ones banning free speech. Oh my God, can you imagine if we tried to? Like, if some president got in there next and they're like, okay, it would be like, let's say a Democrat president got in there next and they said, look, we're going to ban you from talking about pizza shops and we're going to arrest all the January 6ers again. Like, can you imagine what a wonderful world that would be? So yeah. Yeah, Oprah was why Muhammad Oz was a thing, along with Dr. Phil. She found a lot of people that ended up being a little psycho once they got a little fame. Welcome to America. But she is a billionaire and she made a lot of money. So, and then Dr. Oz was trying to run for Senate in Pennsylvania while not living in Pennsylvania. He lived in New Jersey, didn't even have a house here. And I'm just like, okay, how can you run for office in a place that you don't live? It's weird to me. So, anyway, that is the Supreme Court decision today. It's terrible news. And it's going to be very expensive and interesting to see how schools react to it across the country. They have about a month and a half to react to it. And as we said earlier, now they have to send out a list to all parents asking them to approve or deny, on average, 12,800 books for all kids. Yeah, I can't wait for a Republican mom or dad or parent to get that list and be like, oh, I am not reading this list of 12,800 book titles. Why do I have to do this? Oh, because one of my other Republican friends made me. Took it all the way to the Supreme Court and made me fill out this 12,800 list of books. Oh, God. Oh, my God. It's I'm sorry. It's too funny for me. See, in terrible news, my husband and I have a very good relationship where in these talks we get to talk out that sort of thing. And he will tell you that I have a way of finding the humor in terrible situations. So I'll look at this court case and be like, yeah, this just set us back 100 years, and this just, did terrible things for the community. It did terrible things for people of color, for everyone. Our education system is going to be, complete horse crap for a long time. But the humorous part is Republicans now have to look through a list of 12,800 book titles and approve and deny each and every single one. And Republican kids are going to get dumber. Meanwhile, Democrat kids or kids from Democratic families are going to be allowed to learn. And so in the end, when those Republican kids aren't given jobs, how is that parent going to feel then? When the Democrat kids are consistently given better jobs because they're smarter, they're more exposed to the world, they're adhering to DEI policies that companies have for HR purposes. Now those Republican kids are going to be like, oh, yeah, you're competing in a world economy. You need education. Like, I'm not saying you need a college degree. I think you can succeed without a college degree. But I will say, if you're a child that has grown up your entire life without access to any book in any library ever, because your parents said that you didn't want to be exposed to one of the books in that 12,000 book library, then yeah, you are not going to be as smart as the next kid in line that is applying for the same job. And now you are going to get a lower paying job than they are. And now you'll be complaining, oh, my kids aren't given every opportunity. They're not being accepted into Harvard and Yale and all these, elite schools. Well, those elite schools require you to read books. And your parents aren't letting you read any book. So good luck in the world, So yeah, I have mixed feelings on this. While yes, it is terrible and it sets us back a lot, I also feel like Republicans are going to be the ones that suffer, because Democrat parents are going to look at that list coming from their school and say, why would I not let my kid read any of these books? If my kid wanted to read, more about the Holocaust and understand Germany's side, I would approve my kid with understanding and some education to read, any book. Why would I ban it? My kid wants an education, so why can't they read it? So Democrat parents are going to say, go read whatever book you want. I don't care. Republican ones are going to be like, no library for you. No internet access for you. Like, how are you not going to fall more behind because of this? Sorry, I'm pointing to the lawsuit, by the way, and the Supreme Court decision. So it's going to be very interesting. And honestly, Republicans are going to suffer a lot because of it, but a lot of schools are going to have to spend a lot of money because of this too. So please, if you can, support your local libraries, your public libraries. Please go out there and, lend a book ever so often, and, get membership cards for your local library, help them out. Go to some local library event. Our local library has book sales every so often, so they can replace books and stuff. And we go out every year and we buy a couple books from that, because we want to better the education of the system and locally. So please do that if you can. Just thank a teacher. Support teachers unions. There's a lot of things you can do. I love how my husband's like, Harvard is a wonderful organization. Yeah, because you work for Harvard. It is though, actually. So, I'll get books for my kids and they can read whatever they want. Yeah. Well, if you're looking for some great books, while we're on the topic of great books, there's a thing called ProfessorPride.com. I have 37 books on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, a couple other places, and on my website, ProfessorPride.com, we have a whole section of LGBTQ books that I've written. So go check it out and support our show in the process of bringing you more LGBTQ education and resources in the future. Thank you all for joining us today. I think that's going to be it for this broadcast. It's been 3 hours. So excuse me, my voice is kind of losing it. And my husband gets out of work at 3:30, and we're going to have some pizza with no, funny enough, we're having pizza tonight with no babies on it. So we're having pepperoni. So take with that from what you will. No baby pizza. No pineapple on pizza either. Let's get that started in the chat. Let's have a huge debate there. Anyway, so wouldn't they want us to have more education and be more productive? Yes, companies do. You would love that. And Democrats are going to be highly educated after all this, but, you know, Republicans not so much. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. I hope you have a good night. I'm sorry to deliver some bad news with this court case, but at the very least, I will say it brings to light a lot of things we could do, like supporting your local library and supporting your local teachers unions and supporting your local school, because they have a lot of very challenging roads ahead of them this year. So please go and support them and support local LGBTQ organizations near you, as well as our accredited show at ProfessorPride.com, where you can get LGBTQ books, and including Shadow's First Christmas and Shadow's First Pride Event, which are children's books that I authored and illustrated myself, and that are perfect for kids of any age. So thank you so much. I hope you have a great night, and we shall see you on another video that's being posted in about a half an hour from now about Canada, the population of LGBTQ people in different provinces in Canada. And then next week, next Friday, July 4th, is going to be which state in the United States has the most LGBTQ population. I will not be in the office next week because it's my birthday on the 3rd, on Thursday, but I will certainly be enjoying the weekend with my husband, and we shall see you again. Well, I will probably see you again in like 3 weeks from now or 2 weeks from now, but until then, have a good night, everyone, and bye for now.